really we're just more or less challenging ourselves to find other things that people don't expect us to find. We're transportation buyers, motorcycles, cars, anything related to that.
For over 15 years, Mike Wolfe became America's favorite treasure hunter, turning forgotten relics into stories filled with charm, history, and heart. But behind the fame was a quieter truth: strained relationships, broken trust, and personal choices that slowly changed how people saw him. His marriage ended after years of distance, while his bond with longtime co-host Frank Fritz fractured in ways fans never fully understood. The man who could find value in rusted antiques seemed unable to repair the cracks in his closest connections. So what really happened behind the scenes? The hidden life behind fame. Mike Wolfe built a career that made him a household name, celebrated for his charm, sharp eye, and a genuine love for uncovering forgotten treasures. Every week, millions watched him uncover rusted motorcycles, negotiate for ancient signs, and breathe new life into what others discarded. His public image was that of a friendly, straightforward picker who lived simply and authentically. But beneath that carefully crafted persona, a very different story was unfolding, one filled with silence, strained relationships, and secrets that no television camera captured. For years, the man on screen and the man off screen led two parallel lives. The smile that played easily across his face hid a complicated personal life, marked by hesitation, delays, and quiet breakups. Fans saw a devoted friend and partner, yet those closest to him reveal a more complicated truth. This divide between the public and private, Mike Wolfe created a gap that eventually became impossible to ignore. The very qualities that made him successful on camera became blurred by what was left unsaid in his personal world. One of the keystones of this hidden life was a marriage that lingered for almost 2 decades before ever truly beginning. While the world watched him navigate new adventures and make discoveries, Mike's long-term relationship with Jodie Fayeth was trapped in a state of waiting and uncertainty. Though committed to each other, they spent 18 years together without a wedding, a silence on something that fans later saw as quietly unsettling. For a man so skilled at spotting value in forgotten things, this delay raised questions about how he valued the most significant relationship in his life. The contrast only got deeper when their daughter Charlie came into the world in 2012, with a cleft lip and palate, which sorta pulled everyone closer, though it also revealed the little fractures that were already under things. Mike and Jodie's eventual marriage arrived months after Charlie's birth, but the cracks in how they worked together had started quietly forming in the shadows before that. Publicly, Mike showed support during Jodie's later cancer battle, giving off this steady vibe of oneness and courage. Privately, though, the relationship unraveled in that low-key way, ending in separation with no real public word, and then the divorce was finalized in 2021. Mike's distance didn't stop at his marriage either. It spilled into his professional friendships like it just kept going. His longtime co-host and childhood friend Frank Fritz slowly faded from public view. He was less and less in episodes, and then later, just gone from Mike's life in general. Frank's exit was wrapped up in vague lines about health, recovery, and all that, but under the surface, there was something more than ordinary distance, a deeper rift between old companions. Interviews later pointed to this heavy quiet from Mike, and people wondered what really caused the split. The friendship fans believed was real turned out to be something that quietly broke, leaving this painful kind of space right in the show's center. As the public kept watching Mike's work, the gaps in his personal story started to show up like too plain to ignore. The man who once pulled in millions with that energy and real concern now seemed more like a person with an absence in his wake and distance around him. Fans couldn't quite match the on-screen warmth with the off-screen quiet. Even with the success and that charm everyone remembers, Mike's private troubles would, somehow, begin to shape his story as much as his public face. This hidden life behind all that fame challenges a lot of what we thought we knew. It's a quiet reminder that celebrity so often acts like a mask for something more complicated and messy. What viewers catch on television is rarely the whole truth, not even close. In the end, his story makes us look at the price of living two lives, one right under the spotlight and one in the shadows. Behind the scenes of this public figure lies a tale still unfolding, filled with missed connections and undisclosed challenges that reveal the true man behind the camera. The boy behind the picker. Mike Wolfe's journey began in Joliet, Illinois, where he was born in 1964 into a typical Midwestern family. From a young age, he showed an eye for value and the spark of an entrepreneur. At just 4 years old, Mike found his first treasure, an old, rusted bicycle discarded in a neighbor's yard. Instead of leaving it behind, he dragged it home, cleaned it up, and sold it for a substantial profit, demonstrating an early understanding that worth is often hidden beneath neglect. This instinct for spotting value became a defining trait throughout Mike's childhood and teenage years. While others might have seen junk in barns, garages, and junkyards, Mike recognized potential. In the wide open spaces of Iowa, he developed his skills, not merely as a collector or hobbyist, but with the focused determination of someone building a lifelong philosophy. Each rusty relic represented an opportunity, a story waiting to be retold. It was during these formative years that Frank Fritz entered Mike's life. The two teenage boys shared a passion for picking, spending countless hours exploring the same barns and swap meets. Their early partnership was forged through shared enthusiasm and mutual respect, laying the foundation for a bond that would carry them into adulthood and television fame. By the time Mike reached his late 20s, his years of careful study and inventory had given him the knowledge and confidence to leap forward. He was no longer content to sell finds to third parties. He decided to establish his own shop, a real physical space that kind of embodied his love for forgotten objects and all their histories. When antique archaeology opened in LeClaire, Iowa in 2000, it was a critical turning point, turning his passion into an actual business. The shop very quickly became more than a store. It turned into a sort of reflection of Mike's eye for what's overlooked, and also a place where like-minded enthusiasts gathered. Then a second location followed in Nashville, Tennessee, which expanded the reach of antique archaeology and helped cement Mike's reputation as a picker who could uncover value where other people only saw garbage. Put together, these enterprises showed his business sense as much as his personal philosophy. Still, even with all that growth and success, Mike stayed grounded in the lessons he'd learned earlier. His deep understanding that value is not fixed, it is hidden, made him stand apart from plenty of entrepreneurs. That mindset endeared him to fans and customers alike, and it became the cornerstone of his brand from which the TV show would later emerge, without much surprise. Mike's early years reveal a man shaped by curiosity, persistence, and an ability to notice something extraordinary inside the ordinary. They give context to the person audiences embraced, though only partially knew, and maybe couldn't quite explain at first. Beneath the humor and bargains lay the story of a boy who built a vision from rust and dust, setting the stage for everything to come. Building a business and partnership. The partnership between Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz was central to the origin story of antique archaeology and what would become American Pickers. Long before cameras captured their road trips and negotiations, Mike and Frank were two friends united by a shared passion, hunting down artifacts from America's past and uncovering stories hidden in barns and backyards. Their experience together forged the dynamic that would eventually captivate millions. When Mike opened Antique Archaeology in 2000, Frank was more than just a companion. He was a key part of the operation. Together, they brought their combined knowledge and instincts to the business, creating a brand rooted in authenticity. Their complementary skills, Mike's business vision and Frank's encyclopedic knowledge, balanced each other perfectly, making the shop a destination for collectors and fans worldwide. This partnership extended beyond the storefront. Their friendship spanned decades and was built on trust, shared experience, and a genuine love for discovery. They toured the country, exploring remote locations and knocking on strangers' doors, searching for treasures that had been forgotten or overlooked. Their chemistry was natural, unforced, and became a favorite aspect of their growing fan base. Frank's role was really especially important, like in shaping the tone of their work. His easygoing manner and that wealth of lore brought depth plus humor to every episode, even when it probably didn't look that planned. Mike and Frank's rapport kept the show grounded in something real, as you could feel it, and it convinced viewers that what they were seeing was genuine friendship and actual passion. That connection, honestly, became one of the main reasons American Pickers rose so quickly. Then, as the business grew, so did the ambitions too. Opening that second antique archaeology location in Nashville showed both the success they'd earned and their shared dream of expanding their reach. The Nashville shop seemed to plug into a vibrant scene that lifted their brand and presence way beyond Iowa's borders. It felt like a real testament to their hard work and their commitment, straight up. What started as a hobby had turned into a thriving business, but somehow it still held onto that spirit from the early road trips and those dusty barns. Mike and Frank's partnership showed the power of friendship paired with a common aim, which is something you don't see often, not in the world of reality television. Their collaboration wasn't only about picking stuff, it was also about preserving pieces of American history. But the growing business also changed the rhythm between them. What once felt like two friends chasing dusty finds on instinct slowly became something larger, more structured, and more demanding. There were shops to maintain, fans to meet, production schedules to follow, and expectations that kept rising with every season. The friendship was still there, but now it had to survive inside a business machine that needed constant movement. Still, underneath all that camaraderie, some pressures would eventually press on their friendship. Success comes with challenges, and time can test the very bonds that made antique archaeology and the show possible in the first place. But at this point, their story was still more about genuine connection and mutual support, as if it were holding together. And this foundation, built over years of picking and partnership, set them up for the moment when their journey would reach millions in living rooms across the country and around the world. The path from friendship to fame was just beginning, as discovery and personal ambition pulled Mike and Frank into new, uncharted territory. Rise of American Pickers. In January 2010, Mike Wolfe and Frank Fritz's passion for picking found a new platform when the History Channel premiered American Pickers. The show followed them crisscrossing America in a van, knocking on the doors of strangers and unearthing hidden treasures from barns, garages, and attics. What set the series apart was its authenticity. It showcased real friendships and genuine curiosity, drawing viewers into a surprisingly heartfelt journey into America's forgotten past. The show quickly became a hit, resonating with millions each week. By its second season, American Pickers was drawing over 5 million viewers per episode, turning Mike into a national figure. His affable demeanor, combined with Frank's encyclopedic knowledge, created a dynamic that struck a chord. People tuned in not just for the antiques, but for the camaraderie and stories behind the objects. Success brought with it more opportunities. Mike's antique archaeology shops in LeClaire and Nashville began attracting tourists and collectors, drawn by the show's popularity. The brand expanded beyond television, becoming a symbol of nostalgia, discovery, and the idea that value often lies hidden in plain sight. Mike's ability to tell the story behind each find became as important as the item itself. Yet, as fame kept climbing, so did the pressures, kind of quietly at first, then all at once. The casual road trips Mike and Frank used to do, almost as a small ritual, became rigid calendars with filming obligations, plus public appearances that never seemed to end. That initial warmth and the spontaneous vibe that really first defined the show sometimes got worn down by the expectations, like it had to squeeze itself smaller just to fit. Still, Mike didn't really change in the core way. He stayed a picker at heart, the sort of person who spots value where others only see trash. And American Pickers, in the meantime, brought a wider crowd into that mindset, this idea that every single piece has a history, and every history counts. Viewers caught on to the chase, the buzzing thrill of the hunt, but also the quiet respect for old times hidden inside something ordinary, like a screwdriver that somehow ends up meaning more. More than that, the show bridged ages. People who grew up together in different decades found something in the antiques, and an urge to preserve cultural memory. one half-forgotten relic, then the next, and so on. It was like the program kept nudging everyone, even the ones who swore they didn't care, to pay attention. Even so, while Mike's on-screen presence looked warm and eager, the spotlight in real life was steadier, and honestly, harder. Behind the scenes, the constant attention started to tug on his private world. For years, his personal life was kept behind a careful curtain, but eventually it began to overlap with his public image. That made certain personal things more difficult to keep locked away, like the air itself was getting in the way. As the show grew, it became a turning point. Mike went from familiar to truly known, household name known, and it opened up a new chapter in his life. Fame meant that every decision, public or private, now carried extra weight, not only for him, but for the people near him too. That friendly face viewers liked so much was going to be tested in ways no script could ever fully anticipate. American Pickers, overall, became proof of friendship, adventure, and discovery, linking a legacy tightly to Mike and Frank's shared roots. But like a lot of success stories, beneath the surface there were tensions. The excitement of the show's rise brought new opportunities, but also the quiet beginnings of cracks that no one watching could yet see. The long-delayed marriage. Long before Mike Wolfe became a television star, Jodie Fayeth was already part of his life. They met in 1994 through a mutual friend, back when Mike was still chasing a dream far from television fame. He was an ambitious Iowa picker with a sharp eye for forgotten objects, while Jodie saw the man behind the dusty finds, old trucks, and restless drive. Their relationship began long before millions of viewers ever knew his name. For years, Jodie stood beside Mike as his career slowly took shape. But despite their long commitment, marriage did not come quickly. 18 years passed before they finally made it official, a delay that later made their relationship feel more complicated than it appeared from the outside. To fans, Mike was the man who could instantly recognize value in rusted antiques. Yet in his personal life, commitment seemed to move at a much slower pace. Their daughter, Charlie, was born in January 2012, and her arrival changed the emotional weight of the relationship. Born with a cleft lip and palate, Charlie brought both joy and new responsibility into their lives. Mike and Jodie later supported Operation Smile, connecting their personal experience to a larger cause that helped children facing similar conditions. For a time, their family story appeared to be one of resilience, love, and shared purpose. In September 2012, 8 months after Charlie's birth, Mike and Jodie finally married. On the surface, it looked like the beginning of a more settled chapter. But the long wait before the wedding suggested that their foundation had already carried years of uncertainty. What seemed like a fresh start was also shadowed by questions that had been building quietly for a long time. Even after the marriage, Mike's public life kept expanding. American Pickers made him more recognizable, more successful, and more in demand. Jodie, meanwhile, remained tied to the private side of his story, away from the spotlight that surrounded his career. Their relationship existed in the space between fame and family, where the cheerful version of Mike seen on television did not always match the harder realities unfolding at home. For viewers, the marriage later became one of the clearest examples of the gap between Mike's public image and private life. He appeared warm, charming, and deeply connected to the stories of strangers, yet his own relationship had been marked by delays, distance, and silence. The contrast gave his story a more complicated edge, turning what once looked like a simple love story into something far heavier. By the time their marriage reached its later years, the cracks were already difficult to ignore. What began as a long partnership rooted in loyalty and shared history had slowly turned into a relationship strained by time, pressure, and emotional distance. And as Mike's family life shifted behind closed doors, another painful chapter was already waiting: the decline of the friendship at the heart of American Pickers. Illness, public support, and quiet collapse. In 2013, Jodie Fayeth faced one of the most difficult moments of her life when she was diagnosed with stage 2 non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. The news placed sudden pressure on the family, bringing fear, uncertainty, and emotional strain. Mike Wolfe publicly supported her during this period, sharing words of encouragement, and presenting himself as a devoted husband, standing beside his wife through a frightening battle. To fans, Mike's posts created an image of unity. He praised Jody's strength and resilience, and from the outside, their family appeared to be pulling together. By May 2014, Jody was declared cancer-free, a milestone that seemed to mark a victory after months of hardship. It was the kind of moment that should have brought lasting relief. Yet behind the hopeful public image, deeper problems remained unresolved. The illness did not create every fracture in the relationship, but it exposed how fragile things had become. Mike and Jody had already spent years carrying unspoken tension, and the stress of sickness added another layer to a marriage that was not as stable as it looked. The public saw support, strength, and survival, but the private reality was more complicated. In May 2020, Mike posted this sort of now-deleted tribute to Jody and Charlie, like it was all warm and heartfelt, celebrating Jody's 6th year cancer-free. And somehow it read proud too. But not long after that, the marriage quietly kind of collapsed. There wasn't any big announcement, no really emotional public explanation, and also no clear talk on American Pickers, at least nothing obvious. The show kept rolling like his personal situation hadn't shifted, holding on to that cheerful road trip picture, while everything at home changed behind the scenes. By November 2020, Jody filed for divorce, listing irreconcilable differences. The filing was pretty blunt in the sense that it showed the relationship had reached a point where reconciliation wasn't really expected. Then, in December 2021, the divorce was finalized, ending a partnership that ran for nearly 30 years, including the 18 years before they officially became husband and wife. The settlement made it pretty clear how tangled their lives had been. Jody received major assets, including property, financial support, and primary custody of Charlie. The split also covered money connected to American Pickers, which suggests their private relationship was connected not only to family matters, but also to the success Mike built during all those years together. After the divorce, Mike stayed mostly quiet. He didn't really turn the separation into a public storyline or give fans a lot to chew on. Instead, he kept filming and shared the occasional snapshot with his daughter, while the rest stayed guarded. That silence, honestly, feels even sharper. On camera, Mike still came across as the energetic picker hunting down forgotten treasures. Off camera, though, he was dealing with the kind of loss that hits hard: a marriage, a family setup, and the personal steadiness that used to sit behind his public wins. The fading of Mike's marriage set the stage for another painful unraveling, this time in the friendship at the heart of American Pickers. Frank Fritz's departure and fallout. Frank Fritz had been Mike Wolfe's co-host and closest friend since their teenage years. Their genuine bond was what gave American Pickers its emotional core, making their adventures feel authentic and relatable. For viewers, Frank was not just a sidekick, but an equal partner whose knowledge and personality shaped the show's success. Yet gradually, that presence began to diminish. Starting around 2020, Frank's appearances on the show became fewer and less frequent. Initially, the official explanation cited a back surgery and recovery time, describing his absence as a mutual decision meant to preserve health and well-being. Fans hoped for his full return, but the silence and fading screen time raised questions. The friend they had known for so long was quietly disappearing. The story that emerged in 2021 painted a more complicated picture. Frank revealed in an interview with The Sun that Mike hadn't reached out in 2 years during his time away. "I haven't talked to Mike in 2 years. He didn't reach out to me," Frank said, exposing a rift that shocked many who believed in the strength of their friendship. At the same time, Frank shared struggles with alcohol and Crohn's disease, which had significantly impacted his ability to work. In July 2022, Frank suffered a severe stroke that left him unresponsive and hospitalized. His recovery was slow and challenging, a difficult chapter for a man once full of life and energy. Throughout this ordeal, Mike's public response was measured and cautious. He stated support, but did not document any personal visits or deeper engagement publicly. The absence of visible closeness fueled disappointment among fans. Viewers who had witnessed a decade of camaraderie found this detachment hard to accept, as if it were out of place. The warmth and steady mutual support they had assumed were, the backbone of the show now seemed thin, almost fractured. The quiet that sat between Mike and Frank was a stark contrast to that easy rapport that once really defined their partnership. In September 2024, Frank Fritz passed away at 60. Mike posted a tribute that was warm and gracious, but for many, it still felt a bit late, overdue. The loss didn't just mark the end of a life. It also underlined the slow fading of a friendship that had helped give the American Pickers narrative its meaning. Mike's path, through public wins and then private silence, shows the heavy toll fame can take on the relationships that matter most. When Frank Fritz left, it wasn't merely a casting shuffle, it was the loss of a brother in arms and one of the show's essential pieces. Now, with Frank gone and the cracks more visible, American Pickers had to stare down an uncertain future, like a reminder that even the strongest ties can get tried past the point where they can be repaired. The complexities of these personal losses now influenced the present, as Mike moved forward with new relationships and a quieter public life. Life after the spotlight. As the years passed, Mike Wolfe's television fame began to feel quieter, heavier, and far more complicated. American Pickers continued, but the energy that once made it feel so alive had changed. For many viewers, the heart of the show was never just the antiques. It was the chemistry between Mike and Frank, the teasing, the trust, and the shared excitement of finding forgotten treasures. Once Frank was gone, that original spark was difficult to replace. Mike moved forward with his life, building a relationship with Letitia Klein, a model, actress, and motorcycle enthusiast who shared some of his passions. Their connection gave him a new chapter, but it also showed how much more guarded Mike had become. The public saw pieces of his life, but never the full picture. His antique archaeology shops in LeClaire and Nashville stayed open, still pulling in fans, collectors, and those people who somehow still believed in Mike's original mission. Like finding worth in stuff that others basically overlook or dismiss. Those places became more than just businesses. They turned into kind of symbols of the life he had stitched together from rust, dust, and old history that everyone else had let slip away. Money-wise, Mike did well, and his success made it clear how far his vision could go. But money can't exactly smooth out the real cracks. His private life, it had that weight. Broken relationships, awkward distance from the old friends, and a few choices that made his story feel, more painful than the happy version you see on television. That mismatch is what makes Mike Wolfe's later life so noticeable, because on screen, he looks like a man who rescues lost treasures. Off-screen, it seemed like he was also losing some of the more important treasures, too, like friendship, closeness, and that steady trust that lasts. The loss of Frank also left a shadow that the show could not fully escape. Even when new episodes continued, longtime fans could feel that something had shifted beneath the surface. Mike still carried the same eye for antiques, the same hunger for forgotten stories, but the emotional center felt different, without the friendship that once balanced him. In a way, his later years became less about discovering what America had left behind, and more about what he himself had lost along the road. Even so, under the guarded vibe, Mike is still restless with curiosity. The van still runs, the searching keeps going, and the stories don't stop. Still, his life now carries this quiet reminder. Sometimes the most valuable things aren't really hidden in barns at all. Sometimes they're hidden in the people we don't end up holding on to. Mike Wolfe's story reveals a stark gap between public image and private reality, reminding us that fame often hides more than it shows. His journey, filled with passion, success, distance, and personal struggles, challenges us to look beyond appearances and value what truly matters before it slips away. If this story kept you watching, please like and subscribe for more revealing stories behind the headlines, and watch the next video shown on the screen, because the next story uncovers another public figure whose private life changed everything.